Good morning. Sorry for the delay. There is a lot of new technology set up in this room, and I probably should have shown up several minutes early to set it up, but I was just like, I've done this before. It's not a big deal. And it was a big deal. I hope you all had a great summer. And if you didn't, it's too late now. Welcome to graduate school. I will save all the platitudes and everything that you're going to need to know about the graduate program for tomorrow morning. Is everybody excited for have a Tuesday morning? I guess the tax folk mostly are going to have another class right after that. Isn't research like right at 10:30? Yeah, so you're just going to roll into the audit folk and have to roll out of bed and just come in, which is most of you. So everybody in this room knows me. I think everybody in this room has had me for at least two classes. I can't believe I've been teaching AIS that long. It doesn't seem like that was that long ago when I took over for Professor Amos, but you get to have me for another two classes minimum in the graduate program, and for many of you, it'll be three more classes. So by the time you'll have me for five classes, and that's just too much for anybody. So yeah, keep it prepared for that. So I do want to apologize in advance for the syllabus. The syllabus is one of those ones that we did this format in the syllabus like 5 years ago because we were moving over to online. I want to have like a dual syllabus for online and in-person presentation. And I basically prepared my syllabus in this format, and then they said, okay, it's not necessary, not required that you do this moving forward. And I just been too lazy to actually move it out of this format because it's a lot of work to change it to the format. So it's a lot of work to move it back. That being said, it does contain all the information you know. So we'll get through that. Before we get started, I do want to make a few announcements that will be relevant to this course. So first of all, they're relevant to this course and relevant to your enrollment in the graduate program. So some suggestions, and you'll hear me talk about this tomorrow. For those of you who are planning on taking the CPA exam, you might want to think about getting a head start on some preparation for that. And by that, I don't mean start working on Becker now. I mean, if you want to, great. That's no judgment. But MOCPA does offer complimentary student memberships for anybody who's enrolled in an accounting program with the intention of sitting for the CPA exam. So I'd recommend looking at that. They also have a program called CPA Next, which answers a lot of the questions. I do get a bunch of questions about, Dr. Barnes, do I need my scheduler notice now, or do I need to actually do it right before? And I'm the wrong person to ask. It's been over 20 years since I sat for the CPA exam, so a lot of the details are left out on me. So that's a good opportunity to learn about that. Something for may not be relevant to many of you. Many of you may already had good experiences and had internships over the summer. If you did and you got a job offer and are planning on going somewhere, great, congratulations. I hope that's almost everybody. But if you are still looking for a position, there are some opportunities coming up you need to know about. So Meet the Firms is going to be, I believe it's in 3 weeks, 2 weeks from Friday. So basically 3 weeks away. So Friday, September 5th. And if you are still looking after that and need some opportunities, there's another opportunity. It's the Career and Internship Expo. It's going to be on Thursday, September 25th. Now, if you're asking, will you get extra credit for attending that? The answer is no. This is for your career now, okay? There's no extra credit in career, okay? There is kind of a quote unquote extra credit opportunity that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But for the most part, there's no extra credit in this class. There's just kind of ancillary benefits. So we'll talk about that when we get to it. But I would encourage you, if you are still looking for a position, this is your last opportunity. Take the chance you can get it. I did not have a job when I graduated undergraduate, which is the reason I went to graduate school, because I didn't have a job. So it was a good, happy mistake and happy accident, but I would not recommend trying to replicate my accident. So make sure that you have a place to go when you leave. So start looking for that. And for those of you who have a place to leave, you did a much better job than I did in my undergraduate years. So all right, so for this course, so for the most part, this course is not going to require any textbook materials. If you do still have your AIS textbook, we may refer back to that information. But for the most part, a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about that are going to be kind of more of the conceptual approaches to some of this and the applications as they exist in the real world. This course is very heavily modeled on the ISC, the Information Systems and Communication section of the CPA exam. I'm not going to say that that's the only thing that we're going to talk about, simply because if you're not planning on taking ISC, then you might say, well, what's the point of this course? And that would be an excellent question if it was just ISC. I will say that it will not cover entirely the ISC. You should not plan on sitting for ISC immediately when you finish this course with the intention of saying, Dr. Barnes said I'd be fully prepared. I did not say that. Okay. Okay. Unless you're just talking about the mocking words that I just said about that. But it will talk a lot about some of the things that are topics in that area. Some of these are going to be more real world issues, things that you're going to be dealing with on a daily basis in your careers. One of the things that we're going to talk about a lot in a bunch of different contexts are going to be AI. We're going to have a lot of data analytics projects. So these are going to be things that you will utilize in pretty much all aspects of your career, regardless of what track or what position you're planning on going into. So most of this is going to be already posted online. The materials are going to be public access materials, usually links. I will try to do a good job of checking the links before I provide you the assignments. That being said, if you do get an assignment and you can't make the link work, please let me know. This happened last year in one of my classes, is that I created an assignment about a month in advance, and then a government agency completely and totally changed their link setup. So I had to actually redo the entire assignment because the link that I had put in the assignment was no longer active. But I'll try to check those and make sure those are available, but you'll see what those mean here in just a second. And then, yeah, so that's pretty much all you need. Obviously, it goes to without saying that you probably want to make sure that you've got good technology to support, but we're going to be in this room all semester, so you should have all the technology you need. For most part, we're going to be using 2 programs for the heavy lifting in this course. I think was it Troy who was making the joke about you just wanted to learn more Excel, and was that a snarky remark or was that a genuine remark?
That was real.
That was real. Okay, good, because we're going to be working some stuff in Excel. I will say the Excel stuff that we're going to be doing, it's not going to be it's going to be fairly advanced stuff, or it's going to be very specific scenario items. I'm not going to redo how to do VLOOKUPs. It's not going to be like the Friday morning Excel things that we did back in AIS where you walked along with me. You're going to have to do some critical thinking on these. So we got some assignments. And then we're going to be I'm going to be introducing you to a program called Alteryx. Has anybody heard of Alteryx before? Alteryx is a data analysis program. It's very similar to those of you who were lucky enough to get to use IDEA in auditing. I mean that genuinely. Like, so for the context, those of you who took my auditing class over a year ago, we actually had access to IDEA. Those of you who took it in the past year, we did not have access to IDEA. So for those of you who remember IDEA, Alteryx is very similar in function, very different in form, It's a very heavy graphical user interface tool. It is one of my favorite tools. I really wish I'd had this in public accounting, and I've actually been talking to recent students who have been using Alteryx very heavily. I think it's a slow adoption, but I think it's an inevitable adoption. A lot of accounting firms are going to be using it. So we're going to get you on the ground floor and get you running. Hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as I do. We actually started using the cloud tool last year, which basically means that all the software is stored on a different site and we just have to use a website. In fact, you should have received an email from me saying, hey, Dr. Barnes has invited you. I don't know if they called me Dr. Barnes, but Michael Barnes has invited you, and you will need to sign up for that and get ready for that, because that's where we're going to be doing all of our Alteryx work. But it's going to be a few weeks. It'll be week 7 before we start that, but I decided to get that started now rather than later. All right, so you want to have a technology requirements. As long as you have basically the ability to connect to the internet, you should be fine. As with all classes, I'm going to be holding the class in person, and I will be recording the class via Zoom, and it will be posted on YouTube, so they have access to all that information. That will be relevant when we start talking about my my survey mechanism. That's not the right word. Testing mechanism. My testing mechanism for this course. So we'll talk about that in just a bit. As far as what we're going to be covering, here's a general guideline of what things we're going to be talking about in the first few modules. We're going to be talking about IT governance, and then the roles of IT governance and controls and mechanisms in the first few weeks. It is extremely boring and tedious stuff. I'm not going to lie to you. Some of it gets very, very dense. I do try to lighten it up because it's a conceptual tool, like our conceptual concepts. I do take a different approach to this than just standing about and lecturing about it. We'll talk about what that is here in just a second. 6 through 10, we'll get into a little bit more of some interesting stuff. We'll talk about cybersecurity. We'll talk about data management. We'll talk about future trends in information security. That's a little bit better. Cybersecurity is actually a lot of fun to talk about. It is the fraud of accounting technology. So everybody loves talking about fraud, but cybersecurity is interesting. Information security, not so much. The standards and protocols are a little bit tedious. And then we'll talk about emerging technologies in the last few weeks. That's actually going to be fun. We'll talk a lot about AI. We're going to be talking about blockchain and cryptocurrency. So a lot of the things that are catchphrases. I can't say that the schedule that's in the syllabus is going to be 100% accurate right now. There's a reason I call it the tentative schedule. I have taught this course many times before. I took it over, I think, in 2019, and I've been settling on a routine, and I think I settled that routine last year. That being said, I do update information as changes in technology and changes in environment happen. I may actually change some things as we go forward, but for the most part, this will be our framework for the course. All right. As far as, let's see, does it talk about what the format of the course is? Like I said, I hate the syllabus. Okay. All right. So let me talk a little bit about what the course content is going to be and how it's going to happen. So generally, we have 14 modules within this course, and you will notice that we have 15 weeks. That's actually well designed. We're going to have a module every single week, with the exception of last week. The last week is going to be reserved for something special, which I'll talk about in a second. The way the modules work is you will be given a topic along with a series of questions associated with that topic that you will be responsible for answering. And you'll be doing this in a couple of different ways. So half of the topics, or half the questions you're going to have, or roughly half the questions you're going to have, are going to be individual questions, which you will complete on your own before you come into class. So you'll look up whatever the assignment is for the week. You'll say, okay, here are the questions. Here are the resources Dr. Bard provided to answer those questions to the best of my ability. Then you will come in, you will be randomly assigned to a group. Everybody will be, every group will have a group leader, which I want to say it's a random assignment, but it's actually more haphazard assignment because I want to make sure everybody is group leader a rough amount of times. The randomness is not haphazard. That actually does happen. Everybody gets assigned to random groups, which means that you could not be in a group with somebody the entire semester, and you could be in a group with somebody else like 3 times in a row. It is completely and totally random, which that's by definition random, is that you don't get a statistically random sample. You do get those really weird things that happen. The only reason I mention that is that when I do this, it frequently happens that people get put in a group with somebody else multiple times, and they say, this has got to be rigged. And it says, not rigged. It actually is completely true random. So as far as the assignment goes, once you complete the first part of the assignment, you'll come in with your group. You will convene as a group, and the groups are 3 to 4 people. There's 5 groups in this class, so 3 to 4 people in a group, depending on which group you're assigned to. You will converse about your questions that you've talked about and or that you've all answered, and come up with what you think are the best answers for the question. The group leader will document the best answers for the question. Or if you think all the answers are good, you're going to talk about your discussion and say, here's what our ultimate conclusion is. But the idea being is that everybody's going to start thinking about this topic before they ever come into class, and then you're going to have a discussion about that. After that, there are some more challenging questions that you're going to answer that are going to follow up. These are the group questions, and these are the ones you'll answer together as a group. Now, is there any prescribed approach for this? Or you say, Dr. Barnes, can we each work on a different questions? And the answer is there's no prescribed approach. If there's like 5 questions and everybody wants to take 2 questions or 2.5 or 1.5 questions, however you wanted to approach it, that's absolutely fine. However, you do need to be prepared. The group leader does need to be prepared to answer the questions in detail in a subsequent class, because what will happen is we will meet as a class. We'll have an entire prep day. That's going to happen on Wednesday. That'll be our first prep day, by the way. The groups are already been assigned. You will answer the questions. The group leader will submit the answers to Brightspace as part of the assignment. And then on Friday, we'll come in and we'll talk about that. Now, this will happen every week. Generally speaking, this will happen on Mondays and Wednesdays. The only reason that's happening on Wednesday and Friday is because, well, we're having our introduction lecture today. But this will happen every single week, and we'll talk about something in detail. Now, I do want to talk about a few aspects to this. This is supposed to be a little bit lighter approach because, again, these are heavy conceptual topics, like really, really rugged stuff that's not only difficult to think about, but extremely tedious at times. So I want to have the approach that it's not just me up here talking and everybody just like saying, nodding, it's like saying, I really, really am going to fall asleep here just real quick, you know. I want to actually try to make sure that everybody's engaged to some degree. That's the whole goal of this particular topic. And it's worked really well in the past 2 semesters. You'll notice that I teach a lot of conceptual courses. This is my approach for all of my graduate classes. So if you like it, great. You get to experience it again next semester. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. Okay, get ready for a year of misery. That's all I can tell you. Actually, I haven't heard anybody that just absolutely hates the approach. As far as the submission goes, there will be 1 submission per group. This does lead to some issues on Brightspace. So I do have a file submission on Brightspace. And since it's only one submission per group, all the people in the group do not need to submit. But then all of a sudden you'll get Brightspace notifying you failed to submit this item. You need to submit this item. It's late. Okay. If you want to submit a blank document to clear that out so Brightspace is not constantly yelling at you, that's absolutely fine. Okay. I actually prefer if you submit a meme. Okay. That actually makes my day a little bit brighter. Okay. So try to submit a meme for me. If you want to ignore it, that's fine too. As far as the content of the class prep session, so this will be pretty much every Monday. One thing I do want to let you know is the entire class session is intended for your work. When I first started doing this, some of my more enterprising students said, hey, if we finish this all outside of class, we don't have to come to class the next day. And I want to note you, that's not the approach that I want you to take, okay? I had some very, very clever group leaders. I say clever sarcastically, okay? Very clever group leaders who basically worked on the entire group assignment on their own. The leader came in and said, well, I've already answered all the questions, so we can go, all right? I do expect you to be in the class and do expect you to be working. If you finish all the group questions, there are other things in this course that you can work on, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But very rarely should you plan on finishing in like 10 minutes and leaving 40 minutes early, okay? A few minutes early is fine, but there's still, if you have not finished every single assignment in this course, then you should not plan on leaving early. Let's put it that way, okay? As far as attending the class sessions, you know that you know my policy for attendance, and I do expect you to be here for every single class session. This is generally not a problem at this level. I don't really have a lot of people who are saying, well, I can't make it today, Dr. Barnes. Generally speaking, if you're in the graduate program, you know what my expectations are and you're comfortable with those. That being said, if you can't make it to a class session, if you are in a prep with your group for that day, do your best to accommodate that. What that means is, say, for example, I'm gonna plot McKenna and Mary and Austin for a second. Okay, let's say McKenna says, I'm really, really ill. I don't think I can make it. And Mary and Austin are waiting on McKenna to show up and McKenna can't make it. They can make arrangements to meet over Zoom during the class session. And I will set aside a classroom that they don't have to actually have the Zoom open. So Mary and Austin can go to another classroom with their computers and meet with McKenna if that's what's more convenient. If somebody is really sick and can't work at all that day, then basically they should turn in their individual questions to the group leader and do their best to try to follow up whenever possible. But I do expect you to know that you have some accountability even if you can't make the class session, okay? So that would be an example of how you'd accommodate that. Again, attending via Zoom is always an opportunity that you can have for the other class sessions if you can't make it. Please remember that I do think it's really important that you be here in person and engaged. I think everybody knows that by now. It's very, very hard to learn this material at an effective level if you are sitting at your computer at home and you're watching Netflix while you're doing it, okay? I know the last season of Cobra Kai is really, really cool, okay? But you've got other opportunities to do that. So let's go ahead and work on this stuff right now. All right. So that's going to be the majority of the work that we're going to be doing in this course. Now, there will be some other things that we're going to be working on. Let's talk about some of the other assignments. So I alluded to those. On generally every Friday is going to be our data analytics sessions. Now, I say generally, it's not going to happen this Friday and it will not happen the Friday of Labor Day. But for most of the Fridays after that, it will be the case. So the data analytics sessions are going to be advanced data analytics analysis using the tools that I was talking about earlier. We'll be using Excel very heavily. And again, the assignments we're going to Excel are not very simple, straightforward assignments. There are some challenges. We'll find out next week when you talk about this. We're going to talk about data security and hiding information and protecting data and utilizing references between tabs to be able to disguise information. So that's going to be one of those things that you probably have not thought about before, but it's going to be creative uses of Excel in ways that you probably not talked about. It's not just rote application of formulas and the tools themselves. And then we'll be doing Alteryx after that. That will be a little bit easier because I'm assuming most everybody in this room has not used Alteryx, so we'll be going through that step by step. That being said, most of my students have really picked up off on it after the first few sessions. So once we get to the second session of Alteryx, I expect you to really say, all right, there's a lot I can do. Let's see what I can work through on this. And you should have a pretty good, competent level of understanding Alteryx just after the first two sessions, because it's very easy to understand and utilize. Cool. Also, I did talk about my testing mechanism. Some of you may have already picked that up through the syllabus. Instead of having a few tests during the semester. So first of all, I think I've said this in other classes, but I'm going to say it again. I hate tests. Every fiber of my being, I despise tests. Okay. If I could get rid of tests in my class, I would do it. In fact, I tried to do that early on in my career here at Truman State. It did not go well. Okay. It did not go well. Basically, if you tell students that they're not going to have a test, they say, oh, I don't have to do anything in this class. And yeah, that's the problem. So what I came to is a happy compromise a few years ago, and I said instead of doing tests as an exam or for my exam tool, my testing tool, I'm actually going to be doing quizzes, and so we're going to have several of those throughout the semester. It's supposed to be 9 of these. They're worth 15 points each, and these are a testing mechanism. So basically, what you'll be responsible for in the quizzes is any of the content that we covered previous to the quiz, prior to the quiz. So generally every Friday morning, and I say every Friday morning, it's not going to be every single one because there's 15 Fridays or 14 Fridays and we've only got quizzes for 9 of them. So generally on the Fridays, those Fridays will come in, we will sit down for 10 minutes and you'll take the quiz. It is 5 multiple choice questions. It is not intended to be stressful or concerning. Basically, it'll be information that if you covered the detail that we covered in the previous classes, it should be pretty easy to answer. It's kind of the opposite of the types of questions that I asked on my exams and my other classes. It's not necessarily conceptual, but it's more application based. It's more like, what did we talk about and what was the particular context for that? So there is some memorization involved, but the good news is that you can learn it and then you can forget it because I don't comprehensive test stuff after that. So once we've gone over that weeks of content, then I don't cover it ever again on the quiz. There are a few things to note about this. First and foremost, okay, please, 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 I'm going to tell you, I really, really want to keep these quizzes as proctoring free as possible. Okay. I told my students every year that I've done this is that I trust the graduate students and I don't believe that they'll cheat on this. So basically the quizzes, cannot use any materials, you cannot use any of your notes, you cannot use any internet search ups, which is problematic because you're sitting in front of computers, okay? So if you really want to cheat, then you absolutely can, and I would try to avoid that. I'm going to be frank, I do suspect that there was some cheating last year, okay? That is not your fault. I'm not going to penalize you for what I believe was going on last year, but I am going to be a little bit more vigilant on the quizzes this year. And if I do suspect it's going on, then we're going to change the format quite a bit. Okay. So don't cheat. You're not ruining it for just yourself. You'll be ruining it for everybody who takes quizzes in the future if you do that. Okay. The simple truth is if you do everything in this course, you could get 0 points on every single quiz and still get a B in the class. Okay. The quiz is not the make or break item that it is in other classes. Yeah, I do expect you to do the work. Like if you finish every single assignment, which it shouldn't be a problem because of the way the class is structured, you will still get a B in this class regardless of your quiz performance. The quiz is more of that impetus to try to get you to bump to the A. So there's not a high level of stress associated with quizzes. Please do not cheat on them. It's not worth it. Okay. And then see what else have we got. I talked about the data analysis assignments. I talked about the concept activities. Oh, we got the research project. Okay, so this should be posted on Brightspace already. I've been trying to focus on what's some ideas for research projects, and so for the longest time I was doing group assignments in my classes, and I think many of you have done group assignments in my classes, at least one. I'm not against group assignments, but the problem is that I do get an issue where people kind of phone in their group projects. And I really want these end of semester projects to be not an afterthought, but be something that people are doing and that they're actively getting engaged and involved in the semester. Plus, I do think that we don't necessarily focus much on research as much as we would like to in the accounting classes. So I decided to kind of amalgamate these ideas and put them into one concept. And I wanted to do a research project over the course of the semester. So the idea is that your research project is going to be an individual presentation that's going to involve a research case for you. And so I think, let me go ahead and pull this up on Brightspace. By the way, here's the Brightspace page. This is a picture from my DS Pia professor a couple years ago, in case you're wondering why this image is right up here, okay? Because I like the picture so much that I decided to put on a Brightspace. So what can I tell you? So I believe the research project instructions are already posted, but let me go ahead and see if that's the case. Okay, yeah. So we'll just take a quick look at that. So basically what you're going to be doing is you're going to come up with an idea of something that you would like to develop a project on, like you'd like to do research on. And I give you a little bit of a primer on some of the ways you can actually acquire data. Now there's 3 approaches to this. There's archival data, which is I suspect most of the people in this room are going to use. Archival data is basically saying this is pre-existing data that you pull from some sort of external source and then you run data analysis on. Okay. That's usually the easiest form to do that, and I expect most everybody in this room to do that. Okay. Then we have survey data. Survey data is a lot harder to obtain, but it can get more robust results. This is like if you say, I want to know how many students think that accounting is a decent major that are not an accounting major. Like you're going to do a survey of Truman students. That requires you to actually do an evaluation to send out survey instruments to talk to people across campus. It is a lot more challenging, especially if you consider the fact that not only do you have to do that survey, but you have to get permission from the university to do the survey. I do not expect many people to do that. In fact, 0 people did that last year when I did this project. But if you want to do it, we can talk about that possibility. Then we have our AI query data. This is basically using AI queries to develop your data for you. Okay, so this is kind of a random assignment data. It can be very helpful. Do you have a question, Andy? Generally speaking, you need to have for a reasonably robust result at least 30 observations. Yeah. But if you if there's some information in the assignment, if you decide to do a survey data item or survey research, you probably want to make that determination as soon as possible, so I can kind of set you down the path of everything you need to know. Just for context, the reason that this is such an important area is that several years ago, we're talking about probably like 50 years ago, this was kind of the primary area of research. And so researchers were not necessarily ethical in their approach to obtaining data. So there's a very famous experiment. I think it took place at Stanford. And basically, it was you're going to ask a person a question. If they get the question right, then they get a reward. If they get it wrong, they get an electric shock. Okay. And it was not about answering questions right. It was about the perception of torturing people when they get stuff wrong. And by the way, they weren't actually electrically shocking people, but the people who were asking the questions were responsible for admission to the shock. They'd push a button, and the person in the room would act like they're getting shocked. Okay, it caused traumatic experience to the survey participants, which is why we have to actually go through this process to make sure that the survey tools are valid. And it's a pain. I've done it many, many times because that's my primary method of research now, but it can be very rewarding in that regard, just for context. So basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing it this area of 4 deliverables, I believe. So the first deliverable is coming up pretty quickly. You're going to be talking about your research question, your research proposal, and you're also going to talk about your data collection plan. So there's actually a lot of ways you can collect the data. There's a lot of different sites. Again, we've got 3 different types of data data collection. So if you're archival data, you need to actually provide me a link to the data set. And I believe there's some resources in the instructions. Yeah, so there's some open data sets. There's actually a link in there that can show you some free data sets that you can link to. And then survey data, then you're going to have your complete IRB form, which IRB stands for Institutional Research Board Form, and you probably don't know what that is. If you're planning on doing survey data, come talk to me. I'll show you what that is. Okay. And then AI query data, you should have a list of your survey questions and well as the AI tools you're planning to use in queries. So this is pretty basic and pretty straightforward. It's just a very, very brief proposal. We expand upon that. For the second deliverable, you're going to give me a status update. Then the third deliverable is actually going to be your results of your research. And that's going to be not the week before the end of this, or not the week, I think it's week 13, not the week that we leave, but the week before we leave. So the Friday before we leave. And then basically, once you've done your research, you're going to be presenting the results of your research. And I know that you say, presentation, those terrify me. This should be the most straightforward presentation you have. It's something called the 3-minute 3-sys format. If you're familiar with that, it is a single slide of detail, and you present for 3 minutes. And that's it. You got 3 minutes presentation, which sounds very easy, but it can be very challenging to actually compress a research piece into 3 minutes. That's actually the challenge right there, is not to actually do something to find something that's like 20 minutes. It's actually, how do I compress this down to 3 minutes of valuable content? And I really like this format. I will say, for those of you who are interested in this format and just kind of interested, we do have a 3-minute thesis competition in the spring. I would encourage you to actually roll this over into your presentations in the spring. I will be providing rewards in forensics for those of you who do that, by the way. So that's something to consider about as well. One quick note about this is I think all the details about this are listed here. One quick note I want to say that's not necessarily, and it's in the syllabus, but it's not necessarily in the instructions. I do wholeheartedly expect many people to use AI tools to support their research project, and that's absolutely fine. If you use an AI tool, you do need to disclose which tool you used and what specifically you use it for. This is an AI greenlight course. I wholeheartedly encourage you to use AI tools because I think AI tools are going to be far more ever present in the future, and especially in our career. That being said, your disclosure is going to be very important to show what it is specifically you did with it and how you utilize the tools. If you used it for writing, you need to say, okay, some of this content in the write-up is from the AI tool. I would encourage you, by the way, if you develop a manuscript, if you develop your paper using AI tools, what you should do is save this in Word and then go in and track changes and show me the edits that you made to the AI manuscript. That will actually show not just that you used the AI tool, but you also consciously thought about it and updated it using your own information and your own detail. That's not a requirement, but I would encourage you to start thinking that way because that's going to be one of the things that I think is really important moving forward. But you can use AI tools. In fact, I encourage you to do so. They can only improve upon things, but you have to be conscientious about that because as we're going to find out when we start talking about AI tools, AI can make mistakes here and there. Okay. I don't know if you knew that in the many times that I've told you that in other classes, but yeah. So you do need to be conscientious about it, but you can go ahead and use those. All right. And then for the most part, subjective assessment is the way that I've evaluated subjective assessment in all my other courses, whether or not you show up for class and you're working in there. If you show up for class and your group is working on assignment and there's 4 of you in there and the 3 of them are actively talking and you're on sportbets.com or whatever those places are that you crazy kids frequent nowadays. If you're doing stuff other than working on the projects in class, then that can actually hurt your grade in this class. I do not anticipate that being a problem, okay? But I do want to caution you that when you are in my class, when you're working, you should work in my class. This goes back to actually the first time I taught this class. Some students who will not be named, I'm not going to name the students, and instructor not be named, a cost accounting instructor here at Sherman State University, but will not mention that instructor's name. They apparently had some assignments in their managerial accounting seminar course. Okay, again, no instructor names, but they decided to work on that right during my class. Okay, which made me a little bit unhappy because uh, I don't like people blowing off my class for other classes. That is my ultimate sign of disrespect. Okay, when people do that, so please don't do that. Even if you don't find my class to be the most engaging, please do your best to work on my class materials when you're in my class. I would not ask you to work on my class in other classes. In fact, I would encourage you not to do that. In fact, if somebody says, well, Dr. Barnes is giving us so much work to do and this is the only time I can do it, I'm going to say, no, I'm specifically telling you don't work on this class during other instructors' classes. I would do that for them. I hope they do the same for me. Okay. But I don't know. If you encounter any managerial accounting seminar instructors, you may ask them what their thoughts on the issue. Okay. To be fair, to be fair, she totally would not have approved of that. Okay. It was entirely on the students. It was not on her. But I say, well, what is it that you're giving them so much work that they feel that they don't have enough time except during my class to work on this? And it's like, you just crank it back a little bit. Who knows? All right. All right. So you guys know my expectations. You've heard this many times now. Ultimately speaking, in the graduate class, there's a lot more leeway in this class. Okay. So my level of enforcement, my level of critical detail is going to be both relaxed and more acute at the same time. So what I mean is I will let you get away with a lot more in this class. Okay. But my expectations are a lot higher than they were for auditing or AIS. Okay. Now, the easiest way to do poorly in this class is to defy my expectations. Okay. I have not given out a lot of grades lower than B in this class. In fact, I would say that it's pretty equally split between A's and B's in this class because I told you right before the quiz is kind of ultimate determinant of that. I have given out grades below that. The easiest way to get a lower grade is to not complete my assignments or to blow off the assignments and try to submit them late. Okay. When I give you a determinant, when I say, all right, this is when something needs to be done, that's when I expect you to do it. I'm not saying that it's absolutely at the window. I know I'm rambling. I apologize. If you cannot complete an assignment on time, if you reach out to me and say, Dr. Barnes, I'm having problems here. Can I submit this late? Generally speaking, the first 1 or 2 times you do that, I'll be fine. That's okay. If that starts to become a habit, I'll start having a conversation with you and I'll say, this needs to happen. You need to keep up with this. That being said, this is one of 4 or 5 classes that everybody in this room are taking. I realize that your next 2 semesters are going to be the busiest semesters of your entire lives, okay? So I'm not saying that you can use that as an excuse for why you can't complete the assignments in this course. I'm saying that you need to be hyper diligent about making sure that you complete the assignments in a timely manner, okay? Because every single instructor is going to expect the same thing, that you do their work and you do their work on a consistent manner. I will give you a little bit of leeway if you're really just struggling, but that leeway stops after you start abusing that privilege, okay? So please make sure that you communicate with me and you talk with me. There will be a lot more of this, by the way, tomorrow when we have our session. I will give you some tips on how you can approach this more holistically for the entire semester. That being said, I do expect everybody in this room to have a lot of work for their managerial seminar, because that's traditionally been a very rigorous course. And for those of you who chose to go on the tax path, get ready for tax research, okay? So that's going to be a rigorous one as well. The other courses certainly there's some ones that you're going to have as detail in the well, especially when exams come up. I will try to be sympathetic where possible, but I do have high expectations. So complete the assignments, complete them in a timely manner. You will do well in this course. That is a guarantee, okay? Fail to complete the assignments, that's when the grades start dropping, okay? Let's see, what else have I not covered? I think I've covered most of everything. Let's just go ahead and talk really quickly. Is there any questions or anything that I've kind of glossed over that is a little bit confusing? All right, let's talk a little bit about this schedule. So, as I said, we're going to start our routine, our weekly routine on Wednesday, and this normally will start on Monday, but normally be on Mondays, but it's starting Wednesday. When we come in on Monday, you will notice that if you go to Brightspace, in fact, I probably shouldn't pull it up right now. I'm trying to be more conscientious about not pulling up student names on when I'm recording something, because I don't want YouTube accusing me of being a cyberbully. I know I've told that story already, but I'm not gonna start it again. So I'm trying to pull names. But if you go to Brightspace and you go to the assignment, at the bottom of the assignment, you should find there are 5 groups that have been assigned. It's all 17 people in this course. There are 5 leaders, and everybody else has been assigned to a group randomly. When we get into class on Wednesday, basically you will break up into those groups. You will sit in different parts of the room, and I'm not going to tell you how to go about that. Most students have been able to coordinate that on their own. Usually find the leader and go sit where the leader is, okay? And then you will need to complete the first part of the assignment before class on Wednesday. So that should be pretty straightforward, because I gave you all the materials and links you need to do that. You will sit down on Wednesday, say, what did everybody answer? The leader will consolidate the answers, and then you'll answer the questions remaining. Generally speaking, the way that the students have done this in the past is they usually use like a shared file, either a shared Word file or a shared Google Sheets file, or not Google Sheets, Google Doc file, and just recorded all their answers. Please make sure that when you're going through this, that even if you're not answering a question, so if your group decides to split up some of the questions and answer them individually, that everybody in the group knows the answers, that you review the answers together. Because even if you didn't necessarily answer a question in the group questions, you are responsible for knowing what the answer is for the quiz, because I'm going to be referring to these questions a lot for the quiz or for the quizzes. So and then the group leader will save all the documents, the individual submissions, and the group documents that's put together, and that will be the submission for to Brightspace. If you do use a shared file, if you do something like a Google Doc and you do share a file, please download a copy of that as a Word file and upload that onto Brightspace as your submission. Please don't send the link there. That creates no end of problems, because you have to make sure that you shared it with me, and I have to make sure that I'm logged into Google Sheets, and it's just easier to have a Word file. Okay. Our first quiz will not be until next Friday. Like I said, what will happen is we'll come in on Friday, we'll sit down, and then I'll basically say, quiz is active, you guys can start, and you'll answer the questions to the quizzes, and basically we'll do that within 10 minutes. You'll have exactly 10 minutes to complete. Technically, the only time that it's taken 10 minutes is when people have shown up late to class, and so you want to make sure you show up on time. At the very least, if you're going to not be on time, jump on Zoom, jump on there and say, Dr. Barnes, I'm here, I'm taking the quiz. So I don't encourage that approach, but if that's the last resort to have, then please make sure you do that, because I want to make sure you get the quizzes there. All right. And then from there, we'll be moving forward from that. Are there any questions? All right. Well, that does it for today. I want to say I'll see you all Wednesday, but I'll actually see you all tomorrow morning, and then I'll see you again on Wednesday.